ask me if I give a fuck about man. Recently I just don't give a fuck about a thing. Ask me if I give a fuck about it this. Ask me if I give a fuck.
Good afternoon and welcome back, Criminal Files, to another episode of Homicide Cases. I'm your host, Misfit. Join me as I open a file on Franklin Alix. Franklin Dwayne Alix was an American robber, kidnapper, and serial killer who committed at least 4 homicides, 2 attempted homicides, 9 robberies, 2 sexual assaults, and 4 kidnappings during a crime spree in the late 1990s in the Houston, Texas area. Franklin was born on August 6, 1975 in Harris County, Texas. As a child, he was active in the church. He sang in a choir and even taught Sunday school. He later said that he was raised in a strict household. A witness for the defense said during his sentencing that he was a typical fun-loving teenager. Franklin dropped out of school after completing the 10th grade. Not much is known about his family except that he said goodbye to his father, a brother, and his sister Catherine Knox. In September 1992, Alix attempted to steal a bus. He was arrested after a 10-minute chase and received a 6-month sentence for theft. On April 8, 1993, Alix stole a woman's car out of her driveway. He was later arrested while driving her car. Alix received a 3-year sentence for motor vehicle theft and was released from prison in 1996. On July 11, 1996, he was stopped for jaywalking in Houston and was found to be illegally carrying a pistol and ammunition. He was convicted of illegally carrying a weapon and was sentenced to 70 days in jail. In 1997, Alix embarked on a violent crime spree. Most of his crimes were either committed or began in apartment complexes, and several of them involved men or women being locked in their cars' trunks. He committed at least 14 violent crimes, including 4 homicides from August 1997 until his arrest in January of 1998. Authorities said that he was a one-man crime wave. On August 8, 1997, Alix shot and killed 41-year-old Gregorio Ramirez during an attempted robbery in an apartment parking lot. Ramirez's widow identified Alix as the shooter. His violence escalated on September 29th when Alix robbed a woman at gunpoint, forced her into her car trunk, drove off, and then sexually assaulted her. Just over a week later, on October 5th, he shot and killed Selimaway Tewalde in another apartment parking lot. On November 30th, Alix robbed a man getting out of his car and locked him in the trunk. Violence against security guards was a key component of his pattern. On December 6th, he shot a patrolling apartment security guard in the back after forcing him to turn and run away. The guard survived. On December 19th, Alix shot and wounded a townhome security guard while searching for money. Later that same day, he got out of a car to rob a man who then drove off, only to find a woman in the trunk who stated that she had been robbed and sexually assaulted. The crime spree culminated in the events of January 1998. On January 3rd, Alix kidnapped 19-year-old Carol Bridgeford, forced her into her car trunk, and drove her to her home where he stole electronics and sexually assaulted her. When Carol's brother, 23-year-old Eric Bridgeford, and his friend arrived, Alix chased the men, shooting and killing Eric. The following day, January 4th, Alix robbed a man and later fatally shot 34-year-old Christopher Thomas in his car outside of his home. The consistency of Alix's methods, such as the repeated use of car trunks for kidnapping and the targeting of apartment complexes, indicates a calculated methodology rather than a series of spontaneous, desperate acts. The recurring pattern of operation demonstrates a level of premeditation and a developing strategy for victim control, which stands in direct contrast to Alix's later claims of being a mere fun-loving teenager who acted under duress. The repeated use of the same criminal methodology further reinforces the prosecution's characterization of Alix as a predatory and prolific offender. Alix was apprehended on January 6, 1998, just 2 days after the homicide of Christopher Thomas. The investigation that followed successfully linked him to the extensive string of crimes. The state of Texas charged Alix with capital murder for the homicide of Eric Bridgeford, a charge that carries the possibility of a death sentence. During the trial, which commenced in August 1998, the prosecution presented a compelling case, introducing evidence of his numerous prior convictions and the other crimes he had committed during his 6-month rampage. They characterized him as the poster boy for capital murder. In his defense, Alix admitted to kidnapping Carol Bridgeford, but claims the sexual intercourse was consensual, the stolen items were gifts, and the killing of her brother Eric was an act of self-defense. The defense further argued that Alix's actions were the result of duress, claiming that he had been coerced by a man named Kevin Smith due to a drug debt. The prosecution's decision to pursue the capital murder charge specifically for the homicide of Eric Bridgeford was a calculated legal strategy. A capital murder conviction under Texas law requires that the murderer be convicted in the course of another felony, such as a robbery, a kidnapping, or sexual assault. The Bridgeford case fits this criterion perfectly, as the homicide occurred during a burglary, a robbery, and sexual assault. While other homicides committed by Alix, such as the homicide of Gregorio Ramirez, was also tied to felonies, the combination of multiple charges in the Bridgeford case, supported by the eyewitness testimony of Carol Bridgeford, provided the prosecution with the most compelling and legally sound path to a capital conviction. On August 26, 1998, Alix was found guilty of capital murder. During the sentencing phase, the jury was presented with evidence of Alix's violent history to determine if he posed a future danger. The defense presented witnesses who testified that Alix was a typical fun-loving teenager in his youth, attempting to humanize him. Notably, Texas did not have life without parole as a sentencing option. The judge therefore permitted the defense to inform the jury that a life sentence would mean that Alix would not be eligible for parole for 40 years. This meant that he would have no chance of release until he was in his early 60s. Despite this, the jury recommended the death sentence, and Alix was formally sentenced to death on September 2, 1998. Following his conviction, Franklin Alix began a protracted and complex legal battle to challenge his death sentence. His initial appeals were handled through the state's judicial system, but after their denial, he filed a federal habeas corpus petition. This process involved a rigorous review of his trial to determine if any constitutional rights were violated. His challenges were based on three main claims. 1. Evidentiary hearing. The district court abused its discretion by not conducting an evidentiary hearing. 2. Prosecutorial misconduct. Alix argued that the prosecution had committed due process violations by knowingly using false testimony and by withholding material exculpatory evidence. Specifically, he contended that the state's use of flawed DNA evidence to link him to the murder of Gregorio Ramirez, and that the inconclusive nature of the DNA test was not fully disclosed to the defense. This claim was bolstered by the fact that the Houston Police Department crime lab was under scrutiny for mishandling evidence at the time. The court, however, denied this claim, concluding that Alix had not met his burden of proving that the prosecution knowingly used false evidence that was material to the case. The appellate court determined that even if the inconclusive DNA evidence had been disclosed, there was no reasonable probability that it would have altered the jury's verdict. The court noted that the DNA evidence was only one part of the larger body of proof pointing to Alix's extensive history of violence and the overwhelming evidence of the capital murder for which he was convicted as sufficient to secure the death sentence. 3. Ineffective assistance of counsel. Strickland versus Washington. Alix claimed that his trial counsel was lazy. He had provided a deficient defense. He argued that counsel failed to adequately challenge the qualifications of a key medical examiner, Dr. Van Dusen, and did not act diligently to uncover the ongoing investigation into the Houston Medical Examiner's Office sooner. The court analyzed his claim under the two-pronged Strickland test, which requires a petitioner to prove both deficient performance by counsel and prejudice as a result. The court's review of the trial record found that the counsel's performance was not deficient. The court noted that Alix's counsel was in fact aware of the issues with Dr. Van Dusen and the crime lab investigation. They had cross-examined the doctor, moved to bar his testimony, and sought a mistrial, all of which are considered appropriate, diligent actions. All of the sections of his habeas corpus petition were denied. Gregorio Ramirez, homicide and attempted robbery. Selimawe Tawalde, homicide and attempted robbery. Eric Bridgeford, homicide. Christopher Thomas, homicide and attempted robbery. Carol Bridgeford, sexual assault, robbery, and kidnapping. Unnamed woman, sexual assault. 2 unnamed security guards, attempted homicide. On March 30th, 2010, after all appeals were exhausted, Franklin Dwayne Alix was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville unit in Texas. He was 34 years old. Before the lethal injection was administered, Alix delivered his final words from the death chamber gurney. He stated, "I am not the monster they made me out to be. I made a lot of mistakes and took your son. I messed up. I made poor choices. I'll take it to the grave. I will be at peace. It is what it is. I got peace in my heart. These words stood in stark contrast to his earlier claims that his actions were a result of duress from a drug debt, and his continued denial of most of the sexual assaults and homicides. 7 minutes after the lethal injection began, Alix was pronounced dead. The execution was witnessed by family members of the victims, including the sister and mother of Eric Bridgeford and the father and sister of Christopher Thomas. Eric Bridgeford's mother, Janie, brought a photograph of her son to the witness room, stating that she wanted to put a face to this, after seeing so many photos of Alix in the media. She commented that she took no pleasure in seeing him die and that she had forgiven him, but acknowledged that he might never admit to all his crimes. Janie Bridgeford's statement that her family lives were forever changed and that it took her 2 years to return to work encapsulates the enduring trauma that the legal resolution of the case could not fully alleviate. The case of Franklin Alix provides a compelling study of the modern American criminal justice system, particularly concerning capital punishment. The legal process, which spanned over a decade, tested the limits of due process and the standards of effective legal counsel. The appellate court's reasoning for upholding the conviction despite a challenge to forensic evidence underscores a significant principle in jurisprudence. The cumulative weight of the evidence can be so overwhelming that potential for a single procedural error is deemed non-material to the ultimate verdict. The Alix case also highlights the distinction between legal justice and personal closure. While the state's legal process concluded with his execution, the emotional and psychological trauma of the victim's family remained. Alix's final words, in which he attempted to reframe his actions as mere poor choices and claimed to have found peace, stand in stark opposition to the permanent pain his victims' families experienced. This dichotomy illustrates that even when the legal system provides its final answer, it may not fully address the human cost of the violent crimes. Ultimately, the Alix case serves as a comprehensive example of capital case, from the escalation of a criminal career to the complexities of legal appeals and the stark finality of execution, offering valuable insights into the multifaceted nature of justice in the United States. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this episode, give me a like and subscribe. Join me next episode as I open a file on Herman Allen. This is Misfit signing off, and as always, stay safe.